Hello, good morning, everyone. This is Deidre with Are You a CPS Victim Like Me? Um, Apparently, my guest that was scheduled for this morning maybe was having some technical difficulties and might show up in a few minutes if is able to get through. If not, then we'll just continue the show. So I haven't been on in a few days. I had the 4th of July on Tuesday when I would have normally had my last show and got to spend it with my two older boys. So that was kind of, you know, a bit of joyfulness coming to a holiday for me because the last two 4th of Julys, I unfortunately wasn't able to spend it with my children. So that was a kind of a fresh breath of air. And hopefully we will get to do an upcoming sibling visit this weekend with my youngest, if anybody has followed my story. So we are anxiously awaiting that visit for this weekend if it falls through. So we're hoping that does. Other than that, I just wanted to touch on maybe a couple stories that I've come across in the news that I've kind of saved for instances like this when I don't have a guest to maybe kind of talk about and touch on that has to do with CPS. And one that I came across, I live in Orange County, California, and um, I had come across an article from the city of Irvine, which is in Orange County as well. It was posted back in the beginning of June, back on June 6th, and I get my articles from an app called Newsbreak, if anybody else is familiar with that. But it basically entails about a mother that had sued the Irvine Company, which is a company that owns a lot of property in Irvine. And it says the mother sues the Irvine Company, Orange County DA, and then the family court retaliates. So basically, it goes on to talk about how this mother that, was basically fighting for her rights ended up having the Irvine Company retaliate against her because of a situation that she fought through. And it just goes on to say that basically, well, I'll just read it to make sense. It said, Julie Holmberg was due in court via Zoom for a status conference with Orange County Judge Sandy Leal on June 15, 2021, just a few months after her ex-husband chased her down and her children through her city block. In March, William Holmberg had been withholding their two children for days, which is the husband, after they were supposed to be with their mother, something the Orange County DA or the court has acknowledged. There was an emergency hearing scheduled for the next day because of that March incident, records show. Judge Leal had appeared to confirm Julie's appearance and her screen went dark. Then there was a bang at the door. We're here to serve a warrant, the officer said when Julie opened the door. Newport Beach police and OCDA county officials came in and took the two children who were asleep. The court issued a warrant when Julie withheld the children, which she only did as the law makes exceptions for due to the alleged March assault on the children and her. Of the several times Mr. Holmberg has withheld the children or violated restraining orders and was deemed a vexatious litigant, has never had warrant issued since 2014 when he crossed state lines against the custody orders and has never been held in contempt of family court. I've been doing this for 24 years and I've probably had over 10,000 custody hearings. I've never seen a situation unfold this way, Brian Barron, Julie's attorney, said in the courtroom. Barron said he has worked with the child abduction unit previously on many occasions. That's when children are abducted. They're taken from a parent. My client has sole legal custody, and the children remain in and have always remained at her home, Barron said. I understand that there are allegations that my client may not be adhering to the custody orders, but that's not abduction. Barron didn't know what allegations were made by the district attorney's office that got them to have Judge Leal sign a warrant. It greatly troubles me that the district attorney, knowing that we have this hearing this morning and that I spoke to her yesterday because we had inadvertently discovered the warrant that had been issued yesterday, Barron said. Barron explained to the deputy district attorney and the kids are at home with their mother. They haven't fled jurisdiction and there was a hearing for the next day. That hearing didn't take place until November 2022. would then send her detectives over to the house this morning during the hearing to pick up children with police officers, Barron said. Julie's attorney told the court that what they did was extremely traumatic for the children, unnecessary, unwarranted, and shocking that they would do that. Why go to serve that warrant this morning? Barron said. Why is the district attorney involving himself in this case when Child Protective Services has been doing an ongoing investigation? Barron recommended that Julie hire a civil rights attorney. Barron was also surprised with the detectives that have been involved in this case who appear to have been involved in this case previously. I'm looking at correspondence and involvement that is highly suspect and unusual in this case. The hearing continued to the next day. Barron was troubled by what was presented to the court yesterday because he discovered that there was inaccurate information given to court in addition to the warrant. The story is almost over, and then I'll talk about it. This is very troubling. As I keep pointing out to this court, this is a very troubling situation, especially when you have a government agency that's supposed to be neutral coming in and doing things no notice. This is where the Irvine Company comes into play. Julie sued the Irvine Company in 2018 because she had mold and asbestos in her apartment, which was owned by the Irvine Company. The Irvine Company settled the lawsuit in 2021. Julie's attorney in that case, Omar Siddiqui, told her that the difficulties she was facing in family court and with the district attorney was directly related to the lawsuit against the Irvine Company. Several attempts to contact this Omar were made but could not be reached to confirm this. The Irvine Company has donated thousands of dollars to District Attorney Todd Spitzer's campaigns, according to county election records. Full custody of the children was given to Mr. Holmberg in November 2022, despite his history of abuse, harassment, and not complying with custody orders, records show. So basically, in a nutshell, it just goes to show you that here, this mother that had full sole legal custody of her children, and the children were always in her care, in her home, all of a sudden, basically got brought into CPS in the world of that with her ex-husband. And then the Irvine Company, which got played into it, is because they were kind of trying to retaliate against her in a way because she sued them and won a huge settlement. And therefore, her ex-husband, the father of her kids, that was the one that was actually, abusing, harassing, and not himself complying with custody orders, wins at the end of the day. And again, it's because he must have had something in, with the Irvine Company, and they wanted to retaliate against her. So all was said and done at the end of the day. Now it's like she loses her kids, all because of something that she fought legally before anything happened with her kids with this Irvine Company, and how everything can just turn the tables again when I feel like it comes with money and power, and how it all just ties itself into each other. And it kind of ties me back to a story that I touched on a few weeks ago that I think was brought up in one of Mr. Davis's shows recently about the mom from New York, Catherine Hassanoff. That what we know from this news is that did the assisted suicide in I believe it was Sweden, and again, all because she lost her kids to the father, the ex-husband, who was the abusive, totally considered perpetrator of the situation, and she felt like she had no reason to continue living if she wasn't going to be able to, have any kind of relationship with her kids for, again, no wrongdoing on her end. It was just money and power and control. And the reason why I kind of bring these two stories up is because there's a lot of different hosts that do shows under Mr. Davis's platform, and one being, if you're familiar, with Cynthia Becker, the CPS horror stories. And it was a recent show. I'm not sure exactly what day it was this last week, but I just watched it yesterday, of the mother that she had on from Kentucky, which she had six children. And, it was a very long story and very involved, but just so heartbreaking. And, I noticed Cynthia was in tears. I was in tears. I'm sure anybody else that watched it was in tears. But, it really like can break an individual down going through it yourself as a parent. But then when you hear and watch all these other stories that are just so similar to maybe yours or the last one you watched or another one, and the fact that these parents that are good parents, that love their children and, will do anything for their children, but might have got caught up in the situation or might have just been completely innocent all along. But you know how CPS is and just can easily manipulate everything and turn everything around on you. And just by the end of her story, my heart is still aching for her. I mean, I lost my youngest to adoption in this whole situation, which wasn't even born when my case was open. But I also feel like now that I know a lot more about CPS, and they found out that when they opened my case that I was 7 months pregnant, about to, give birth to my third, I almost feel like that's why my case even lasted as long as it did, because it was like they had their eye on the prize, my youngest, completely what they consider quote unquote adoptable child. And, that's money, money, money. And, with her case, she had a lot of children that they were able to either medicate or label as, maybe having a disability. And again, we all know that's just more money, you know, with pharmaceuticals and how they can do all that. But it's what she basically said it boils down to is just another paycheck and another paycheck. And it's really sad and really like discomforting, especially for parents that have been through this, to know that we live in a country where we're supposed to be like, come to America, get your freedom, all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, to think that not only do they basically kidnap your kids in situations like this, but then, basically sell them out. And it's almost like you feel like you have no power or control in it unless, again, you are able to have the funds to be able to hire a private attorney. But most parents, like we hear on all these stories, the parents don't find out basically the name of the game or the way the game was played until it's too late. And even if they do have the funds to hire an attorney, I mean, it's very, slim chances still that you might come out with your children at the end of the day. But like Cynthia has even said herself on her show many times, yes, she did get her kids back, and she, was fortunate in that aspect. But then again, she always says she didn't get her kids back. She got these trauma filled, you know, been through nightmares after nightmares type of kids back. To where, again, how is this beneficial for kids? How is this in the best interest of these kids? And everything that they quote unquote preach and talk about and say that they're supposed to be about, I mean, it's nothing but the opposite. And I feel like the more and more stories that I hear or watch or try and feel like people are doing to get this word out to maybe hopefully make a change one day, it's like Mr. Davis said, it's like, I forgot how he quoted it in the show I just watched like last night from this week, but it was like from that movie with Jack Nicholson and whatever about basically cocktail hour or something, meaning at the end of the day, you could talk the talk, but until you actually walk the walk or do something about it, I mean, it's just all talk. But again, as parents kind of feel like, well, what is it that we can do? Of course we want to do anything in support, anything to make a change. But again, it's just, it takes so much to also do that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And, that's the main reason why I continue to try and do this show, because I feel like it's a way of me continuing to fight in a way for my children, especially my youngest, because, he was adopted. But my two older children, my mom's just a legal guardian. So I'm hoping that that's not the end of the road there. And I do get to see them basically every weekend and home. And that's the other sad part too that I always touch on, but a lot of people don't realize how hurtful it is until you actually go through it. But how CPS can almost just really rip your whole family away from you. I had a very small family to begin with, but when my case started, I mean, and even to this day, I basically don't have a mother anymore. And that was really the only person that I had in my family at that time. But um, not only do I not have a mother, but she's the one that has my kids. And it's sad to think how much now even money has basically made my mom's true colors shown, in the fact that I don't think her intentions are to ever give me my kids back because of the whole money aspect. And never in a million years would I ever think, number one, that my mom would basically turn against me and not believe me and think that, CPS must have some kind of justified reasoning to take my kids because they did and they haven't returned them. But then the money, you know, like I would never in a million years think that, God forbid, down the road, if my kids had kids and I was the grandma, I would do anything and everything I possibly could do to not only have my grandkids in my care so they wouldn't go into foster care, but immediately, the second that they could be back home with their parents, meaning my kids, I would want to push it more so than not. I mean, I couldn't imagine thinking that I'm keeping my grandkids from my kids just out of spite or money or believing CPS. I don't get that. And it's just sick to think that CPS has so much control, but yet they're doing so much damage to these poor, innocent children. And how, it's just so easy, I feel like, for people to become foster parents. But then you come to find out these foster parents that end up getting your kids are 10 times worse than any situation of a biological parent. Let's just say if a biological parent really truly had like a substance abuse issue or maybe domestic violence within the household with the mother and the father, okay, give them services, have them work on it. And if they're showing progress, if they're working their case plan, but yet in the meantime, you're going to place their children in a foster home of then come to find out these foster parents that are maybe past sexual predators themselves that never really got checked or slipped through the cracks or are actually abusing the kids, and not really taking um, any kind of signs from maybe the biological parents saying, hey, I think we should look into this. A lot tying back into that story with Cynthia and the mom from Kentucky. Her poor kids were literally being physically abused by these foster parents. And they had already had two other children that they had adopted from another biological family that basically, I guess, had just given up because they couldn't fight anymore. And that foster parent would say to those two kids, the only reason why I adopted you is because nobody else wanted you. Not only would she say that to those kids, but then hear this mother from Kentucky, her kids that were placed there, were hearing this and hearing the way that she would talk to those other kids. And then, just the examples of how she said her kids were just being literally physically abused. Now, her one son basically would come back to her and tell her, Mom, this is what's going on at this foster house. And, I'm trying to stick up for my siblings. And then, I feel like no one's going to protect me if I stick up for them and tell you because then the foster parents will find out and then I'll get in trouble. And it's just that vicious cycle. But then to know that you're the mother and those are your babies, and yet they got taken from you for supposedly some kind of neglect or abuse, which was never really true. And again, like she even said, which makes perfect sense. Yeah, they give you this case plan to work, and they tell you got to go to parenting classes. They tell you got to go to therapy. They tell you got to go to drug testing but they set you up with their therapist. They set you up with their parenting class. They set you up with their drug facility that are all tied in with CPS. It's kind of like a court appointed attorney. Why even bother having a court appointed attorney like presented for you when we all know they work for the state? I mean, yeah, you might get one or two that are kind of like maybe showing that they're trying to maybe do something for you, but at the end of the day, we all know that they're not going to really do anything that they really have to break their back for because at the end of the day, their paycheck is still going to be the same, regardless if they get your kids back for you or not. And if anything, like I said, they all work for the state, so they're kind of buddy buddy with them. So again, why would they really want to go against these social workers or whatever, But it's just every day, not only do I wake up with my children not with me, but then when I really hear these like tear jerking stories, it makes me just filled with such anger and thinking that how could this really be and how can there be other humans out there that can really be okay with knowing that this is what they're doing to these poor innocent children. I mean, I think that when she was describing like her quote unquote goodbye visit, I don't even know how they could call that, number one. I mean, to have a goodbye visit with your children, I mean, that's just sickening in itself. But until you've actually gone through something like that, I mean, oh my Lord. And like she said, she literally just sat there and just hugged, her kids and tried not to cry, but she couldn't hold it in. And she reassured her kids that she will never, never, never stop fighting for them. but you hear her story in such an entirety, and you really shake your head and think, why does this individual get to continue their life with my children, knowing that they are being abused there, and they were never being abused with their biological family, never really being neglected. It was all basically false allegations, but they were able to manipulate the situation and make it so that, she ended up getting to that what they call time clock and losing her kids. And, it's just so frustrating. So, again, another story that I had saved that I kind of wanted to touch on was this one. Again, I'm from Orange County, California, so I kind of always like follow or am more interested in reading stories that are here in, Southern California. But this one was also back at the beginning of June 1st, in LA County, where a Los Angeles mother was awarded over $3 million due to false allegations of child neglect by LA County social workers. So this is kind of, I guess, like maybe a positive story, if you want to call it, but it was stating that a Los Angeles County mother lost custody of her son due to false allegations of neglect by LA County social workers. The court awarded the mother $2.94 million and an additional $165,000 because she was found to be a victim of discrimination. The mother claimed her child was taken from her custody without a warrant, despite the fact that no emergency existed. The court also found that the social workers involved in the case acted with malice towards the mother. The jury in this case found that DCFS has an official practice of seizing children without a warrant. Some common tactics of social workers, it goes on to say, this case demonstrates common experiences among parents who have been involved with CPS social workers. It's common for social workers to remove children from their parents over allegations of neglect. Neglect is a broad term used to cover everything and anything. This gives social workers an easy excuse to remove children from their parents' custody. It's also common for social workers to remove children without a warrant, which is a violation of the 4th and 14th Amendments. Children can only be removed without a warrant when there is imminent danger to the child. But it has become common practice for social workers to remove children without a warrant, regardless of the circumstances. In addition to violating parents' constitutional rights, it's not uncommon for social workers to lie and falsify evidence in court. This deliberate misrepresentation of facts often leads to termination of parental rights. Kind of exactly what I just explained in that story of the mother from Kentucky and mine. Social workers are allowed to continue operating in this manner because there is no accountability in the system. Although social welfare agencies claim to be working toward reform, there hasn't been much progress. They don't want reform because the current system is too lucrative for them. A cash incentive for each child removed and placed in foster care and no accountability for their actions doesn't give them any incentive to change. And that right there just ties it up in a nutshell. These social workers, like, it's almost like they could just do whatever the heck they want to do, because even if they are wrong and they know that they're wrong, and if you try and prove that they're wrong, and let's just say that if they are proven wrong, that nothing ever happens to them. And even some sick situations we've heard from Mr. Davis before, that they actually get promoted in a way, and it's just, where is anything ever going to be, like they say, accountability, or so that these social workers can feel threatened. And again, this is such a situation where, unless you ever have been involved with CPS or know of a family or know of a story, you're going to be like every other parent out there that, God forbid, they come knocking at the door. You don't even know the first thing, which is, if they don't have a warrant, don't let them in. Or if they don't have a warrant to take your kids, don't let them take them. Or don't talk to the social worker. Or all the simple things that once at the end of a case, you now think is just so like common knowledge. We all know that we didn't know it in the beginning. And it's just really sad to think that you're, like Mr. Davis says, fighting for the biggest like case of your life. It's your children. And yet you have no knowledge of anything that's about to happen to you or be done to you. And yet you feel like you're trying to fight because it's your kids. But again, you're just, oh, somebody said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. My mother illegally took my sister's children, then mine on purpose to gain control of us." Was it through CPS? MG Maisie? Again, my shows are on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings at 10 a.m. If anybody is ever interested on coming on my show and sharing maybe your story of how you've been a victim of CPS, or even maybe a story that you know about, or you know your grandchildren, or whatever the case may be, um, I would love to have you on. If you see the 888 number on the bottom right hand corner, you can always call in, and the producer's name is Grace, and you could just ask her that you'd like to be scheduled on one of my shows on Tuesday or Thursday at 10. And I'd love to have you come on and share your story. So, MG Maisie, if you're interested, I'd love to have you come on. But yeah, you're right. People have no idea. I mean, and I'm just as guilty of it, myself. Meaning, if I were to hear that my neighbor got their kids taken from CPS, I would have thought immediately, like, oh, she must have done something wrong. But again, it's just no. But then it's also the flip side of it. You do have like those stories where children really do need to be removed from the home or the situation they're in. But you know what? As sad as it sounds, if I were to maybe see that kind of situation, I would very much probably be very hesitant in calling CPS, because not only do I feel like, okay, yeah, the children would be removed, but now I know what the children would then go through as well. So it's kind of like you're stuck. What do you do in a situation where you really need to call somebody to save children that are in abusive or neglectful kind of situation? You really don't know who to call then, because you already know all the horrorness of what these poor children are going to be put through when CPS does come involved. And a lot of times, too, people don't realize that once CPS comes into your life, no matter, like, let's say if they even just got a call and then like they investigated and they didn't find anything, you got lucky, so to speak, and they closed the case. Hold on, no CPS had no legal evidence. A survivor of CPS have siblings who didn't make it. Wish I could speak out, but it's a long gone water under the bridge. CPS has siblings like your siblings. You're a survivor of CPS, as in like you were the child, or you're a survivor as in you're the parent and your kids stayed with you. I'm a little confused. Wish I could speak out, but it's long gone. I mean, I always feel like if the children are still not home, no matter what the case may be, it's not water under the bridge, because you can't give up on your kids. I mean, you can never give up on your kids, or that's at least how I feel. I mean, even though my youngest son is technically getting adopted, I don't even know if it's finalized. I don't know when it's going to get finalized, because I'm not allowed to find out that information out. For all I know, they could change his last name, they could move, they could stop, communicating with me, and maybe I'll never know when I'll see him again. But at the same time, that's still my child, and I will never stop fighting for him. Never, ever, 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 ever. I mean, I don't know how a parent could, so to speak, but there's, I guess, different situations to each and everybody and their story. But I went through the BS with these MFs. I fought almost 3 years to get my kids back. I went above and beyond what they wanted, and they still filed permanent custody and was taking me to trial. So when you say you're a survival of CPS, I don't quite understand, because by what you just said now, it seems like you didn't get your kids back. I'm a little confused. Oh, this is Nicole. This is a different person. I'm sorry, Nicole. I think the person or oh, you're saying about yourself. I went through the video. So Nicole, did you get reunited with your children, or is your case closed? And again, Nicole, if you want to ever come on my show and share your story, like I said prior, you can call in that 888 number and ask the producer Grace that you'd like to be scheduled on my show. It's on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10. But anyways, I don't remember what I was saying before I started reading the comments. But again, I think that story that I watched the other day with Cynthia and the mother from Kentucky, it just really, again, kind of opened up my wounds. And not that I don't live them every day without my children, but, it's really just so like heartbreaking to hear that not only do the parents suffer, because okay, you took their children away, but these poor children. I mean, you take them away from their biological family, and then in her case, they split up the siblings, you know. So not only do they now not have their parents, but now they don't have some of their siblings. They're with these complete strangers, come to find out that now are abusing them, and then to be told at this goodbye visit that they don't know when they're going to see their parents again. I mean, it's just so, 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 so horrible by all directions. And to be that parent in a situation and feel so helpless, I mean, it's just disgusting. Like you just almost want to go and kidnap your own kids and just flee the country so you can have your kids with you. I mean, you almost feel just that helpless, you know, and to think that these complete strangers get to, you know, live the rest of their life with your children and abuse them. When yet CPS is supposed to be doing the opposite, all because of money, all because of money. And I just wish there was somehow some way that the whole funding part of it all could be like somehow eliminated from CPS. And then you would probably wonder what the heck would happen. They probably have no people to place these children in as far as foster homes. Seriously. I mean, they probably have nobody that would want to take these children because there's no money, there's no incentive. And that's the sick part of it. You think that these foster parents are doing it because they truly care about kids. I mean, granted, there are good foster parents out there. I'm not going to say there isn't, but we all kind of know the majority of the bunch of them all, I guess, is in it for the wrong reason. And that's still where I struggle with, you know, the couple that, you know, were fostering my youngest and now have adopted. It's like not only were they obviously fighting me more than I feel like CPS was to adopt my child because they couldn't have kids of their own. This was their first placement. They had my child since he was a month old. And then my case dragged out to basically what, July of last year. And he was born in 2020. So almost 2 years. In October, it would have been 2 years. So they had him from 1 month old till almost two. And so, of course, they used all of that timing against me in every way, shape, and form. The bond now that he has with these people is going to be more detrimental to break than to return home. Are you kidding me? The only reason why he's been with these people and so called establish a bond is because you put him there. Paternal grandmother, in my case, since day one, had voiced her opinion that she wanted placement. Supposedly went through the whole RFA because she was living in Bakersfield, so it was out of county. But then come to find out, I found out down the road that the money follows the child. So if they would have somehow allowed my youngest to be placed with paternal grandmother that was living in Bakersfield, which is Kern County or whatever it is, the money would have followed the child, so it would have went out of county. So Orange County would have lost the funding. So of course they were never going to go for that. But little did I know that. Little did paternal grandmother know that. I mean, they came out, they did um, the walkthrough of her place. She had to go and do all these foster parent classes, and then that again boggles my mind. It's like how do you expect grandmother of a child to go take foster parent classes in order to be approved to have her grandchild be living with her or placed with her? Where in a normal day life, CPS not involved, if I want my mother or my husband wants his mother to watch her children or take care of her children, whatever the case may be, in her care, there's no kind of walk through of the house, you know, foster parent classing, you know, screening of this and that. I mean, it's her grandchildren. It's just CPS in just so many ways. It's just, you just get so frustrated. And that's the other thing. You know, they put you through all this stuff to basically break you in any kind of way, shape, or form. The main thing they tried to do in my case was separate me and my husband. Because again, it's that saying, divide and conquer. Thankfully, we stuck it through. We've been through way worse, 13 years together and our three boys. But let me tell you, every day we get up without our kids, it tears on us and tears on us. But you know what? We are all we have left as far as my husband would always tell my kids, we are one unit. We are our family. Like when my mom turned her back, you know, thankfully his family stuck by his side. But, you know, when my family left me and I'd try and, you know, look for support from him or a shoulder to lean on, he would always tell me, you know, it's okay. We are our family, you know, and this is our family. me, you, and our kids, and we're never going to give up on each other. And he would always tell my kids that too, especially to my oldest, you're the older brother, you're the big brother. You make sure you always look out for your younger brother. But that's the other sad part. Not only did they adopt my youngest out, but did they ever take into consideration how it affected my other two children, meaning the siblings of my youngest, and how he's going to obviously be affected growing up without his siblings, but yet they're always wanting to do what's in the best interest of the children. It's so ass backwards in so many different ways, shapes, and forms. You want to go get your own therapist so that you can feel like you're getting like I guess, an equal opportunity at not having a biased therapist. Then all of a sudden it's like not approved, or it's not a court appointed therapist, or they try and manipulate this therapist. I remember I was on my third therapist because the first one, I don't even want to go there. She would even call my youngest a girl when he was a boy. Oh, hold on. Casey Gutierrez, these a-holes ruined mine and my children's life, and many people in No's life as well. I am located in northern, I'm assuming California. My husband, and he came up here trying to steal my children from me, and he had to call the cops because he was in my home. I ran out of the house, not thinking he was going to call the cops on me. I made up lies, and I believed him. I happened to have solid evidence that got me acquitted, and they have dropped all my charges. They should have given me my children back, but instead they have probably given them to your husband, I'm assuming, because that's also usually what ends up happening, which does not make any sense whatsoever. But whatever they can do to make money. Again, Casey, I don't know if you've been listening since I started the show today, but if you ever want to come on my show and be a guest and share your story, it's on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10. Call the number on the bottom right-hand screen, the 888 number, and ask Grace, the producer, that you'd like to be scheduled, and I'd love to have you come on. The more and more we share these stories, hopefully, I pray that one day not only will maybe changes be made, but hopefully maybe we can prevent families that are going through it or going to go through it, maybe be more knowledgeable about it. Mr. Davis always says, which is so hard to accept and hear, but, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Sorry, I keep interrupting when I see the comments, but I like to read them to keep you guys as the watchers feeling engaged. And MG said, I never gave up, just lost every battle. Your story is so similar. MG, did you get reunited with your children? I don't know if I already saw that or not. But yes, we are our children's voices. We can't ever give up. I mean, my child is mixed racial. My husband is Black, and I'm obviously white. So he is half Black, half white. Well, the foster parents, or now adopted parents, are both white, blonde haired, blue eyed, Mormon, practicing very heavily into the Mormon church. And let's just say, fast forward maybe 10 years from now, when my son starts to really start to acknowledge his physical features and realize that maybe not only will he probably not fit in with that quote unquote kind of atmosphere, but just imagine all of the struggles and tribulations he's going to have to go through just from being put into such an atmosphere that he doesn't even genetically, whatever you want to call it, fit. And it's so sad. I mean, I don't really like to bring religion into a lot of things because, we're all human at the end of the day. You can have your belief in whatever, you want as far as that goes. But when it comes to a religion that I feel like affects your daily life in so many different ways, shapes, and forms, as far as I feel, this is my personal opinion of, Mormon practice, I just don't agree with a lot of it. And to think that my son has to not only, I guess, grow up in this atmosphere, but, be probably treated as a Mormon and feel like that's how he's going to have to live his life. I mean, it's just so disgusting to me and sad to think why my innocent child having to be now placed in this kind of situation and then grow up when yet he wasn't even born when my case opened. As far as how was he the one that was affected the worst and basically stolen from me? I mean, I guess I could go on and on and on, and I always kind of talk in circles, I feel like, but I feel like I just can't say it enough, and I can't, repeated enough, because you never know when that parent that might just have clicked on Mr. Davis's platform, and maybe my show is airing right now, and maybe some of my words are kind of ringing bells to them, thinking, wait a minute, like someone just said, this sounds very similar to my case. Well, that's why I want to keep doing it and getting the word out there, and just keep on, keep on, keep on. And like I said, maybe hopefully one day, um, if we don't make a change anytime soon or in my lifetime, maybe the knowledge of what we keep repeating will hit parents in the beginning of their case instead of at that end of the time, and now it's too late. Because I always say, if what I know now I knew in the beginning, I don't even think my case would have hardly went on as long as it did, or end in the result that it did. Because again, you just don't know anything. You really don't. I mean, the simple beginning part of that investigation, that is so crucial, because, like Mr. Davis says, once that investigation is over, and if you really didn't do everything you could to fight those allegations or false allegations, the investigation part closes, and it's almost like that's now the law of the land. Those accusations, even if they were false or not, they're now stuck with you to like the bitter end. And it's like, little did you know that. You're just trying to be open and honest with these social workers to try and let them know truly, like, the individual you are, and like, yeah, it's not true, but really you didn't know how much you needed to fight something so simple as I get neglect because they said my husband was the quote unquote perpetrator for domestic violence, and because I supposedly let it go on or happen, or whatever I did to try and get away from it or get the help that I needed wasn't valid enough in their eyes. Well, now I did failure to, or basically neglect, because I didn't provide whatever it's called. I'm tongue twisted now, but uh, protect, failure to protect. So that's what I got. And then, because of course I continued to stick by my husband's side as he worked his case plan and I worked mine. I mean, again, isn't that what kind of marriage is about? Until death do you part. As far as, I mean, let's be honest, if my husband was a complete like abuser and drug user and going off the end and not getting help and not realizing he had an issue or something like that, of course, there comes a time when you got to realize, okay, I'm not going to remain in this kind of situation, because it's not only harmful to myself, my kids, but it's toxic and everything else. Okay, yeah, there's a situation when that time comes. But, it's almost like my husband was accused of false allegations in that aspect. And, you know, little things were took out of proportion, but let's just say he agreed to saying he was at fault for some things, and he worked his case plan. He also went through 3 therapists, and every single one of them, he did 16 weeks with them that would tell him, we're only contracted with you basically for 16 weeks because that's all CPS will pay us. So basically, at the end of 16 weeks, we consider your therapy to be quote unquote finished. Oh no, then the social worker would have to put in another recommendation for another therapist. He went on 3 full therapists that all said at the end that not only did he recognize, his situations, whatever that might have brought us into this situation, but he's learned from it, and they would give examples and this and that and this and that. And it was like the more that these people could talk highly of you, the more CPS didn't want to hear anything to do about it. I'll never forget this. I'm going to kind of close the show out with this thought is, even with my social worker, she used to call my therapist, my third one, that was so like for me and almost did anything she could to try and things like as far as not only was I complying, but I was always on time. I never missed any. I did extra services that she would recommend to try and, show the courts that, I'm going above and beyond. All the social worker wanted to do every time she'd call in and check up on the therapist with how I was doing is basically say things along the lines of, has she admitted fault or something like that? Or has she accepted basically something, something? And the therapist would say, kind of like that story with the mom from Kentucky. Um, has she admitted to something or not? And she's like, no, why is she going to admit to something that she's not, at fault at? And, she's doing this and doing that and using these strategies and these plans. And, again, The social worker almost kept wanting to repeatedly say, well, that's not how I feel. You must not be asking her these kind of questions, or you must. And I almost would tell my therapist, wait a minute here. Is she the therapist or are you the therapist? And my therapist would laugh and be like, I know. It just seems like if I have nothing negative to say about you, she didn't want anything to hear about it. And it's so disgusting to think that here they're supposedly putting you through this therapy to get therapy and to work from it and improve from it. But no, that's not what they're doing it for. They're doing it so they can hopefully get a therapist, is like working for the state, is going to say whatever the social worker wants them to say. And that's why they're going to use the therapy against you. Just like with the drug testing. How many times have you heard these parents go on drug tests and all of a sudden they get like a false positive or this or that? And the parents are like, there's no way. There was just a story on the other day with a mother on Mr. Davis's show that said that they asked her to go drug test and she knew that she was clean by every shape, way, and form, and there would be no way in heck that she would even go and test if she even thought that there would have been a slight chance of her testing dirty. Not only did she come back testing dirty, but all of her kids did, and the numbers, she said, were so outrageously high that she said even when she was actively using, she knew about the numbers, I guess, that she would test. And these numbers that came back were even like double that. And she said even like her 6 month old, like she even said the numbers I'm forgetting, but her 6 month old like even tested at numbers that would be like the kid would be dead, like comatose. Like how is this not a red flag to like the judge and stuff, or like even her attorney? Like hello, there has to be something wrong here. But nope, all they're curious into seeing is, oh, she got a false negative. I mean, she got a positive test. We're gonna come take the kids. And then it's almost like you're done. Now they have all these labels on you. You're a drug addict, or this, or that, and especially if the kid's supposedly tested. But like that one show that Mr. Davis had with the forensic scientist, Okori Okorochi. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but it's not even about drug testing. It's like here we're thinking we're going to drug testing, but no, we're really just going to getting drug screened. Because like he said, it's only a drug test if it's truly like at a lab with like all these different like ways to test and da 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 and goes on and on and on. And that truly drug screens are not even admissible in court if you object to them. But again, it all ties down to how do we know that as parents? And if your court appointed attorney is not even telling you all this because maybe they don't even know about it. Because Mr. Davis didn't even know about some of the stuff he said until he had this, forensic scientists come on it and speak about it all. I mean, it's just disgusting to think that so many parents have basically not only had their kids taken from them, but then lost their kids because of all this drug type of substance stuff. And to know that none of it really even is legitimate as far as how they could prove it or how they could really, say if it really was in your system or if it didn't cross contamination with another person's, urine or whatnot. It's sick to think you could lose your kids over something like that that is really not even truly legal, I guess you'd say. But again, how do us parents know? We just think that these people are doing what they're supposed to do when in reality they're doing the opposite. So again, I'm sorry if maybe I was all over the place again today. I just would love to have a guest come on because again, the more people come on and share their stories, I feel like the more word gets out and then they tell people and then it's like that old school saying, telephone, the game of telephone. And when it comes to something like this, I feel like, wow, like I said, you hear some of these stories, like the one I just watched with the Kentucky mom, and I don't know how you couldn't want to repeat that story because it's just so heartbreaking. And I don't know your name. I'm sorry. I keep saying the Kentucky mom, but if you were to watch this show, again, my heart goes out to you and don't stop fighting. I know hopefully one day you'll be reunited with your kids. If anything, your kids will not give up on you and, you'll get to be with them again, hopefully one day. And maybe you can come on and share a success story because that would really make me happy because I felt like my heart tore into many pieces listening to your story. But again, I've lost a child too, and the heartbreak is every day you live with it, and until your kids are back home, you will live with it. So to all those parents out there, or even grandparents or family members, keep the fight going. Don't ever give up on your kids. And until next time, next Tuesday at 10 a.m., hopefully I'll have a guest scheduled that can come on and share your story. All right, everyone, have a good rest of your day, and I'll be back next Tuesday. Goodbye.